My wife said, I married you because canceling the wedding was a waste of money. I paid $500,000 for our wedding, and 6 hours later my wife confessed she loved another man and brought him to our honeymoon. We were in the presidential suite of the most exclusive resort in Cancun, overlooking the turquoise sea with French champagne chilling in a silver bucket. It had only been 6 hours since we said our vows in front of 200 guests. Lucia was still wearing the silk nightgown I'd given her especially for tonight. But when I approached her, she pushed my hand away with a sharp gesture. I can't do this, she said, looking toward the balcony, avoiding my eyes. Rodrigo, I made a terrible mistake. My heart stopped. The words didn't make sense. 6 hours earlier, Lucia had walked down the aisle with a radiant smile. She had cried during her vows. She had kissed her parents, thanking them for giving her to a man who would love her forever. Now, on our honeymoon, she was telling me she'd made a mistake. What are you saying? I asked, feeling the floor disappear from under my feet. Lucia finally turned around, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Coldness, determination, as if she'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her head. I'm in love with someone else, she confessed in a firm voice. With Sebastian. Sebastian, her co-worker at the advertising agency, the same guy who had given an emotional speech at our wedding just hours ago, toasting to our eternal happiness. The same one who had hugged me in the reception hall telling me I was a lucky man. We've been seeing each other for 6 months, Lucia continued, as if she were reading a business report. I tried to end it with him before the wedding. I really tried, but I couldn't. I love him, Rodrigo, and you deserve to be with someone who loves you the same way. 6 months, half a year of my life, while we were planning our wedding, while I was working double shifts to pay for the designer dress she wanted, while we chose the flowers and the menu and argued about whether the tablecloth should be ivory or champagne. Half a year while she was sleeping with another man. I sat on the edge of the king-size bed trying to process what I was hearing. The room was spinning slightly. I could hear the music from the hotel bar filtering up from below, laughter from other guests enjoying their own honeymoons, oblivious to the collapse happening in the 16th floor suite. So why did you marry me? I managed to articulate. Finally, Lucia sighed as if the question tired her, because I thought it could work, because my parents were so happy, because we'd already invested so much money in the wedding that canceling it would have been a waste. I finished the sentence for her, unable to believe what I was hearing. You married me because canceling the wedding would have been a waste of money? It's not just that. She defended herself. It's complicated. You're a good man, Rodrigo, but Sebastian, he makes me feel alive. He makes me feel like myself. The words were like knives. Every sentence was a direct stab to the heart. I who had emptied my savings account to give her the wedding of her dreams. I who had taken out a personal loan to complete the payment for the venue because she insisted we needed the most exclusive place in the city. I who spent 3 months searching for the perfect engagement ring with the diamond she described in detail after seeing a picture in a magazine. Does he know? I asked in a subdued voice. Sebastian knows you married me today. Lucia nodded slowly. He agreed we should wait, give things time. But after today, after seeing you at the altar so happy, so confident, I can't keep lying to you. It wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be fair. As if she suddenly cared about fairness. As if marrying me knowing she loved another man was the pinnacle of honesty. I stood up, needing distance from her. I walked to the balcony and opened the sliding doors. The Caribbean night air rushed in, bringing with it the smell of salt and tropical flowers. Down on the beach, I could see the shadows of couples walking hand in hand in the sand. Probably also newlyweds, probably also planning their lives together. There's something else, Lucia said from behind me. Of course there was something else, because this couldn't be devastating enough. Sebastian is here, she confessed. In the hotel, in room 312. The world stopped completely. Not only had she betrayed me, not only had she used me to have her dream wedding, she had brought her lover on our honeymoon. What? Was the only thing I could say? I booked his room 3 weeks ago, Lucia explained with a disturbing calmness. I thought maybe after a few days here, after being together, I'd realize that we were the right thing. But it didn't work out that way. Every time I look at you, I think of him. Every time you touch me, I wish it were his hands. I felt nauseous, literally physically sick. I ran to the bathroom and vomited into the Italian porcelain toilet, while I heard Lucia, talking from the room as if we were discussing the weather. I know this is horrible, she continued. I know you hate me now, but eventually you'll understand. It's better you know now than to live a lie for years. I rinsed my mouth and looked at myself in the mirror. The man looking back at me seemed to have aged 10 years in 10 minutes. My eyes were red, my skin pale. The tuxedo I'd worn just hours before to get married was wrinkled, the tie hanging loose around my neck. I came out of the bathroom and found Lucia packing her suitcase. What are you doing? I asked, although the answer was obvious. I'm going to Sebastian's room, she said without looking at me. You can keep the suite. It's already paid for anyway. I'll take a flight back tomorrow. We can sort out the whole marriage thing when we get back. Sort out the whole marriage thing, as if it were an administrative procedure, like filling out a form or changing a postal address. Something inside me broke at that moment. It wasn't my heart, that was already shattered. It was something different. It was the last reserve of naivety I had left. The part of me that still believed in the fundamental goodness of people, that love meant something, that promises mattered. Lucia, I said in a voice I didn't recognize as my own, cold, controlled, dangerous. Before you go, there's something you need to know. She stopped with her suitcase half closed, finally detecting the change in my tone. That wedding you enjoyed so much. I continued, walking slowly toward her. The 500,000 pesos I spent. Do you know where that money came from? Lucia blinked, confused by the change of topic. It wasn't just from my savings, I revealed. I took out a loan. A big loan, a very big one. And do you know who co-signed for it? I saw understanding begin to form in her eyes. Your father, I said softly. Don Fernando, who was so proud to walk you down the aisle today, so happy to give his only daughter to the man who would love her forever. He co-signed for the loan because he wanted to make sure you had the perfect wedding. Lucia paled. If this marriage ends before a year, I continued, enjoying every word. The loan clause specifies that the full amount becomes due immediately, and since we're legally married, we're both responsible for that debt. But since your father is the co-signer, isn't he? Lucia whispered. Yes, I confirmed. If you leave me tonight, if you run off with Sebastian, your father will lose his house. The house where you grew up, the house he bought 30 years ago and finally finished paying off last year. 500,000 pesos is exactly what that property is worth. It was a lie, a complete and absolute lie. There was no such clause. The loan was standard, with no special penalties, but Lucia didn't know that, and in her state of panic and guilt, she wouldn't stop to check. The suitcase fell from her hands. Rodrigo, please what? I asked. Please forgive me. Please forget that you betrayed everything we had. Please let me ruin your family without consequences. Lucia started to cry. Real tears this time. Not the carefully timed tears she'd shed during the wedding ceremony. You can't do this. My father has nothing to do with this. You're right. I nodded. He has nothing to do with it. But you made him sign those papers. You insisted. The most expensive dress, the most expensive everything. And now you're going to live with the consequences. I moved closer to her until I was inches from her face. Here's your choice, Lucia. You can leave right now with Sebastian. You can take that flight tomorrow, and when you do, I'll call the bank on Monday morning and inform them that our marriage is over. I'll send them the pictures you'll surely take with your lover over the next few days. And then your father will receive a letter informing him that he has 90 days to pay 500,000 pesos or he'll lose his house. Lucia was trembling. Or, I continued, you can stay here with me. You can pretend this marriage is real for at least a year. You can smile in the pictures, attend family dinners, sleep in the same bed as me every night. And after a year, when the loan is consolidated and the clause expires, you can leave with whomever you want. Your father will keep his house, and you can live with your conscience. The silence in the room was absolute. Only the sound of the waves breaking on the beach and Lucia's ragged breathing could be heard. You don't have to decide right now, I said, walking toward the door. Take the night to think about it. Talk to Sebastian if you want. But remember, every decision has a price, and this time it won't be me who pays for it. Only, I left the suite, leaving her standing there amidst her open suitcase and her broken dreams. I took the elevator down to the lobby and walked straight to the hotel bar. I ordered a double whiskey and drank it in one gulp, feeling the liquid burn my throat. The bartender, an older man with a Cuban accent, looked at me sympathetically. Marital problems already? He asked with a sad smile. You have no idea, I answered, ordering another drink. What Lucia didn't know, what she couldn't know yet, was that the lie about the loan was just the beginning. I had spent the last 6 months working double shifts. Yes, but not just to pay for the wedding. I had been building something, preparing for all possibilities, because I wasn't the naive man she thought I was. And this betrayal, this humiliation on our honeymoon, was going to cost her much more than she could ever imagine. I spent that first night of my honeymoon at the hotel bar until they closed at 3 in the morning. The Cuban bartender, who introduced himself as Ernesto, listened to a summarized version of my situation while cleaning glasses and nodding with the wisdom of someone who had seen too many human tragedies unfold in front of his bar. Women are complicated, my friend, he told me as he dried the last glass. But men who sleep with other men's wives, they're pure trash, and the women who cheat on their own honeymoon. He paused, looking for the right words. They have something broken inside. I returned to the suite around 4 in the morning. Lucia was asleep on the sofa, still wearing the silk nightgown, her suitcase closed by the door, but she hadn't left. The blanket from the closet was wrapped around her body. She had been crying. That was evident from the mascara stains on the decorative pillow. I didn't feel compassion. I felt nothing, except a cold, calculated determination. I lay down on the king-size bed, in the same spot where hours before I had expected to truly begin my married life. And I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. I didn't have nightmares. I didn't have dreams, just a black and silent void that felt strangely comforting. I woke up at 9 in the morning with the Caribbean sun streaming through the open curtains. Lucia was sitting on the balcony looking at the sea with a cup of coffee in her hands. She had changed her clothes. Now she was wearing a white sundress she had bought specifically for the honeymoon. Seeing her, where it provoked a wave of anger that I had to control by breathing deeply. "Good morning," I said from the balcony door. She flinched, spilling a little coffee on her dress. "Good morning," she replied in a small voice, wiping the stain. "Did you make a decision?" I asked directly, without beating around the bush. Lucia swallowed hard. "I spoke with Sebastian last night. I explained the situation with my father's loan and I insisted, although I already knew the answer from her defeated body language. He told me we should wait," she confessed, looking at her cup. "That a year isn't that long. That after that we could be together without consequences." Of course he said that. Sebastian wasn't going to risk anything for her. Men who sleep with engaged women are rarely willing to sacrifice themselves when the situation gets complicated. They're opportunistic predators, not passionate romantics. "So, we stay married for a year," I confirmed. Lucia nodded slowly, tears starting to form in her eyes, but with conditions. This surprised me. Even in defeat, she was trying to negotiate. "Conditions," I repeated in a dangerously calm voice. "Separate rooms," she said quickly. "I'm not going to. I can't be with you that way. We'll sleep in separate rooms, and when the year is up, you'll sign the divorce papers without a fight, without asking for alimony or anything like that." The audacity of this woman was impressive. She had betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. She had brought her lover to our honeymoon and still had the nerve to set conditions. "No," I said simply. Lucia blinked. "What did you say?" I said no. I repeated. "There will be no separate rooms. There will be no conditions. Do you accept the deal as I proposed it, or do we call the bank on Monday?" "That's not fair," she protested, standing up so abruptly that the balcony chair fell backward with a metallic thud. "Fair," I laughed humorlessly. "You want to talk about fairness after what you did to me?" "I'm not asking you for sex," she yelled, her voice breaking. Just a little dignity, a little space." "You had your chance for dignity," I replied coldly. "You lost it when you decided to marry me knowing you were in love with another man. Now you live with the consequences." Lucia collapsed onto the balcony floor, sobbing. Her shoulders shook violently, her hands covering her face. She looked small, fragile, completely different from the self-assured woman who had confessed her betrayal the night before. But I had learned something important in the last 12 hours. Lucia's tears meant nothing. They were just another tool of manipulation, another way to get what she wanted, and this time they weren't going to work. "Get up," I ordered, "and go get ready. We have a breakfast reservation at the hotel restaurant at 10, and you will smile and act like the happy wife you're supposed to be. Because if anyone suspects something is wrong, the deal is off." Lucia looked up at me from the floor with eyes full of pure hatred. It was the first time I'd seen her real face without the masks of love or guilt, and I realized that maybe I had never really known her. "I hate you," she whispered with venom in every word. "The feeling's mutual," I replied. "Now get up." Breakfast was a performance worthy of an award. Lucia smiled brightly. She laughed at my forced jokes. She even leaned over to kiss me when the waiter took a picture of us with my phone. Any casual observer would have thought we were the happiest couple at the resort, but I could feel the tension in her body every time I touched her. I could see the glint of restrained tears in her eyes every time she looked toward the beach, probably wondering which room exactly Sebastian was in, if he was thinking of her, if he felt her absence. After breakfast, I suggested going to the beach. Lucia couldn't refuse without raising suspicion, so we spent 4 hours under the Caribbean sun, applying sunscreen to each other, swimming in the turquoise sea, drinking piña coladas served by attentive waiters who constantly congratulated us on our wedding. At one point, while Lucia was in the water, I saw a man watching her from the hotel terrace, tall, dark-haired, with expensive sunglasses and a tense posture. I didn't need to be a detective to know it was Sebastian. I waved at him friendly, as if he were just any stranger. He startled and quickly moved away from the railing, disappearing inside the hotel. I smiled to myself. Coward. That night Lucia tried to sleep on the sofa again. I physically carried her to the bed, ignoring her protests and weak blows against my chest. "This is part of the deal," I reminded her. "A married couple sleeps in the same bed. The hotel staff comes to clean every morning. What do you think they'd think if they found the king-size bed perfectly made on one side and the sofa with blankets? They might think we had a fight," she argued weakly. "Or they might think the truth," I countered. "And then the rumors would start. And the rumors would reach our families. And your father would start asking uncomfortable questions about why his daughter and his new son-in-law can't even share a bed during their honeymoon." Lucia closed her eyes tightly. Defeated, she lay on the farthest side of the bed, her back to me, her body as stiff as a board. I lay on the other side, maintaining a respectful distance. I didn't touch her, I didn't try anything, but the message was clear. I controlled this situation now, every aspect of it. The next 5 days of our honeymoon followed the same torturous pattern. During the day, we were the perfect couple. We took tours of the Tulum archaeological site, dived in the cenotes, dined at the resort's most romantic restaurants. Lucia smiled for the photos, held my hand when people were around, even kissed me on the cheek when the situation required it. But in private, the silence between us was as thick as concrete. We barely spoke, except to coordinate our public performances. At night we lay on opposite ends of the king-size bed, as physically far apart as possible, both facing away from each other. On the 4th day, as we walked along the beach at sunset, maintaining our charade of a happy marriage, I saw Sebastian again. This time he was sitting at the beach bar, drinking alone, watching us with an expression that mixed jealousy and frustration. I stopped in front of him, surprising both Lucia and Sebastian himself. "Sebastian," I exclaimed with fake joy. "I didn't know you were staying here. What a coincidence." Sebastian choked on his drink. "Rodrigo, yes, I decided to take a last-minute vacation." "How wonderful," I continued, completely ignoring the palpable discomfort. "You should have dinner with us tonight. Lucia and I would be delighted to have company, right, love?" Lucia was pale, her eyes darting between Sebastian and me, as if watching an accident in slow motion. "I don't think that's appropriate," Sebastian tried. "Nonsense," I insisted, patting his shoulder hard. "Maybe too hard. You're our friend. You gave a beautiful speech at our wedding. It would be an honor to have dinner with you." I wasn't giving him a choice, and he knew it. Dinner that night was the most uncomfortable thing I've ever witnessed in my life, and that included the moment Lucia confessed her betrayal. Sebastian could barely look me in the eye. Lucia pushed food around her plate without eating anything, and I maintained a cheerful, one-sided conversation about our honeymoon activities, describing in detail every romantic moment, every kiss, every hug. "And this morning," I said as I cut my steak, "I woke up with Lucia snuggled up against me. It's incredible how marriage changes things, isn't it? That intimacy, that deep connection. There's nothing like it." Lucia coughed into her wine glass. Sebastian looked sick. "You two should try it someday," I continued, looking directly at Sebastian. "Marriage, I mean, when you find the right woman, Of course, the woman who loves you enough to spend the rest of her life with you. There's no better feeling in the world. Believe me, every word was a knife, and I was enjoying them. After dinner, as we walked back to our suite, Lucia exploded. What was that? She hissed, once we were alone in the elevator. Why did you invite him to dinner? Why did you torture him like that? Torture? I asked innocently. I was just being nice to a friend. Isn't that what happy couples do? Socialize with their friends. You know exactly what you did, she accused, her eyes shining with contained fury. You're right, I admitted, my voice losing all pretense of kindness. I know exactly what I did. I showed your lover that you're mine now, that every night you sleep in my bed, that every day you smile for me, that for the next year he's nothing more than a spectator in your life. This is cruel, she shouted. Cruel. I laughed humorlessly. Lucia, you haven't even begun to see how cruel I can be. The elevator doors opened on our floor. I walked out first, leaving her there with those words hanging in the air. On the last day of our honeymoon, as we packed for the flight back, Lucia finally asked something she had been silent about all week. Rodrigo, she said in a low voice, folding one of her sundresses. Does that clause in the loan really exist, the one that says my father would lose his house? I looked her straight in the eye. Does it matter? Yes, she replied. It matters, because if it doesn't exist, then I'm living this hell for nothing. I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Do you want to find out? Call your father. Ask him about the papers he signed. Review every clause, every bit of fine print, and when you discover the truth, whatever it may be, then decide if it's worth the risk. Lucia held my gaze for a long moment, searching for some clue in my expression. She found none. I won't do it, she said finally, returning to her suitcase. Because even if there's a chance, a tiny chance that it's true, I can't risk my father's house. Wise decision, I commented, closing my own suitcase. What Lucia didn't know, what she wouldn't find out until much later, was that the clause didn't really exist. The loan was completely standard, with no special penalties. Her father was never at risk of losing his house, but by the time she discovered that truth, it would be too late, because the real plan, the real revenge I had been preparing for months, was just beginning. And this time it wouldn't be just her heart that would break, it would be her entire life. The return to the city was silent. Lucia slept through the entire flight, or at least pretended to. With her headphones on and her eyes closed behind her dark sunglasses, I checked my phone, answering accumulated work emails and messages from family asking how the honeymoon had been. Incredible, I wrote to my mother. Lucia and I had a wonderful time. Cancun is a paradise. The lies flowed so easily now. When we landed, my parents were waiting for us at the airport with balloons and a giant sign that said, "Welcome home, newlyweds." Lucia forced herself to smile as my mother hugged her effusively and my father patted my back with pride. You look radiant, my mother commented, studying our tanned faces. Marriage suits you. We're very happy, Mrs. Elena, Lucia replied in a sweet voice that turned my stomach. Rodrigo was the perfect husband throughout the honeymoon. The performance continued. We arrived at the apartment we had rented together 3 months before the wedding. It was a modern 2-bedroom space in a central part of the city. Lucia had insisted on decorating it completely with new furniture, designer curtains, and an equipped kitchen we would probably never use. All paid for, of course, with the money from the loan her father had co-signed. I'm going to unpack, Lucia announced as soon as the door closed, dragging her suitcase toward the master bedroom. Use the guest room. I ordered. She stopped in her tracks. What? You heard me. The guest room is yours. I'm taking the master now. But you said there would be no separate rooms. She protested with genuine fusion in her voice. I said there would be no separate rooms when there was a chance someone would notice. I corrected. Here in our apartment, no one comes without notice. Your things go to the guest room. End of discussion. I saw relief briefly cross her face before she could hide it. She thought I was doing her a favor, giving her the space she so desperately wanted. She had no idea this was part of the plan. The first few days after our return, we established a strange and dysfunctional routine. I would wake up early to go to work at the accounting firm, where I had secured a management position 2 years ago. Lucia would leave shortly after for her advertising agency, where of course she worked with Sebastian. In the evenings, I would arrive first. I'd prepare dinner, although neither of us ate much. Lucia would invariably arrive late, always with some excuse about meetings that ran long or urgent campaigns that needed immediate attention. I knew the truth. She was with Sebastian. On the Friday of our first week back, I decided to confirm my suspicions. I left work early, told my boss I had a doctor's appointment, and parked across from the advertising agency where Lucia worked. At 6:30, when most of the employees had already left, I saw Lucia leave the building. She wasn't alone. Sebastian was walking beside her, too close to be just colleagues. They stopped in the parking lot, talking in low voices. He touched her arm. She leaned toward him. For a moment, I thought they would kiss right there in plain sight of anyone passing by. But Lucia looked around nervously and pulled away. Sebastian seemed to say something else before walking to his own car. Lucia stood there for a long moment, her shoulders slumped, before heading to her car. I followed her at a safe distance. Instead of taking the direct route to our apartment, Lucia drove to the other side of the city, stopping in front of a luxury apartment building. She sat in her car for almost 20 minutes, just looking at the building. I checked the address on my phone. It was the building where Sebastian lived. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Lucia started the engine and drove home. She arrived 40 minutes later than usual, with red eyes and a look of utter misery. "How was your day?" I asked casually when she came in. "Long." She answered without looking at me. "I have to go to sleep. I'm exhausted." "Of course," I said. "Those long-running meetings must be tiring." Lucia froze halfway to her room, detecting something in my tone, but she said nothing. She just closed the door behind her. The following Monday, I set the next phase of my plan in motion. I made a phone call during my lunch hour. "Fernando Mora?" I asked when they answered. "Speaking," replied Lucia's father's deep voice. "Don Fernando, it's Rodrigo, your son-in-law." "Rodrigo." His voice lit up with genuine warmth. "How are you, son? How's everything with my princess?" "Very well, Don Fernando. In fact, that's why I was calling. I wanted to thank you personally for trusting me with the wedding loan." There was a brief pause. "Ah, yes. Well, it was the least I could do. Lucia is my only daughter. I wanted her to have the wedding of her dreams. And she did, thanks to you." I continued. "I also wanted to mention something. I'm considering starting to make advance payments on the loan. My situation at work has improved considerably, and I thought it would be good to reduce the debt faster." "Advance payments?" Fernando sounded confused. "The bank is okay with that, yes," I lied smoothly. "In fact, they recommend it. It reduces the long-term interest, but I wanted to check with you first, since you co-signed. I didn't want to make any changes without your knowledge." "How considerate of you, Rodrigo." Fernando seemed genuinely moved. "You're a good man. I knew I made the right decision by supporting this wedding." The words hurt me more than I expected. Fernando was a good, hard-working, honest man. He didn't deserve a daughter like Lucia, and he definitely didn't deserve what was about to happen. But betrayal has a price, and someone had to pay it. "There's one more thing, Don Fernando," I added before hanging up. "Could you send me a copy of the loan documents? Just for my personal files. I want to make sure I have everything organized." "Of course, I'll email them to you this afternoon." When the documents arrived, I read them carefully. As I expected, there was no special clause about early divorce or penalties. The loan was standard in every way. Fernando would lose his house only if I stopped making the payments and the bank foreclosed. Which, now that I thought about it, was an interesting possibility. That night, Lucia came home even later than usual. It was almost 10 p.m. when I heard her key in the lock. She came in with her hair slightly disheveled and her makeup smudged around her eyes. "We had a client crisis," she explained before I could ask. "Sebastian and I had to stay and solve the problem." Sebastian and I. She wasn't even trying to hide how much time they spent together. "I understand," I said neutrally. "It must be hard to work so closely with him knowing you're in love but can't be together." Lucia paled. That's not." "Save it." I interrupted her. "I know exactly where you've been, who you've been seeing, how often you stop in front of his apartment building wanting to go up but not daring to." Her eyes widened in shock. "Are you following me?" "I don't need to follow you," I replied. "Your patterns are predictable. You arrive late 3 or 4 times a week, always with work-related excuses, always mentioning Sebastian, always with that mixed expression of guilt and longing on your face." Lucia sank onto the sofa, covering her face with her hands. "I can't keep doing this, Rodrigo. I can't live like this for a whole year." "Then don't," I said simply. She looked up, hope shining in her eyes. What do you mean? Call the bank. Verify the loan clause yourself. If you find out I lied, that there was never such a penalty, then you're free to go. No consequences. Lucia looked at me with suspicion. Why would you do that? Why would you give me that option now? I shrugged. Maybe I'm tired of this game too. Maybe I realized that keeping a woman who doesn't love me trapped isn't the revenge I thought it would be. I could see the gears turning in her head. She desperately wanted to believe me, wanted to believe it could be as simple as making a phone call and getting her freedom back. Do it. I urged her. Call tomorrow. Ask specifically about the penalty clauses in case of premature divorce. Ask them to read every word of the contract to you, if necessary. I will, Lucia said with a trembling voice. First thing tomorrow. Perfect. I smiled. And when you find out the truth, we can end this once and for all. That night, Lucia went to her room with an expression I hadn't seen since before the wedding. Hope, anticipated relief, the belief that her nightmare was about to end. What she didn't know was that her nightmare was just beginning to take real shape, because while she was planning her escape, I had been busy building something much more elaborate than a simple lie about a loan. I had been planting seeds for months, cultivating connections, preparing the ground. And tomorrow, when she made that call to the bank, when she found out that I had indeed lied about the clause, when she believed she was finally free, the real blow would fall. The next morning, I woke up early and got ready for work, like any normal day. Lucia was already awake, sitting at the dining room table with her phone in her hand and the loan documents she had found in my study spread out in front of her. Did you call yet? I asked casually as I poured coffee. They open at 9, she replied without looking at me. 20 minutes to go, then I'll wait with you, I said, sitting across from her. I want to be here when you find out the truth. Lucia shot me a resentful look, but didn't object. The 20 minutes passed in tense silence. At exactly 9 o'clock, she dialed the bank's number. I listened to her explain the situation to the representative, asking them to verify the specific clauses about premature divorce. There was a long pause as the employee checked the file. I saw hope grow on Lucia's face with each passing second. Are you sure? She finally asked. There's no penalty for divorce within the first year. Another pause. I understand. Thank you. She hung up the phone and looked at me with a mixture of triumph and absolute fury. You lied, she said in a trembling voice. There's no clause. There never was. You've been manipulating me all this time. I leaned back in my chair, taking a sip of coffee. Yes, yes, she yelled, standing up so abruptly that her chair fell backward. That's all you have to say? You kept me prisoner with a lie. You forced me to live in this hell based on nothing. I forced you to live as my wife for 3 weeks, I corrected calmly. 3 weeks in which you had to pretend to love me. You had to smile for the photos. You had to keep up appearances. 3 weeks during which you couldn't be with Sebastian openly. That's all. 3 weeks of torture. She howled. 3 weeks, I repeated, compared to 6 months of betrayal. I'd say you came out ahead. Lucia grabbed her phone and started typing frantically. It's over. I'm leaving today. I'm going to tell Sebastian to pack my things. And what? I interrupted. You're going to move in with him? You're going to live happily ever after? Yes, she yelled defiantly. Exactly that, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. You're right, I nodded. There's nothing I can do. You're free to go whenever you want. The loan has no penalties. Your father is safe. You can walk out that door right now and never look back. Lucia blinked, surprised by my sudden cooperation. Really, I confirmed. But before you go, there's something you should know. What? She asked cautiously. I took out my own phone and opened a specific folder. I showed her the screen. Do you remember our wedding day? I asked, when all the guests were taking photos and videos. Lucia paled as she looked at the screen. It was a video taken by one of our guests during the reception. In it, Lucia could be clearly seen in a corner of the hall talking on her phone while I was dancing with my mother in the center of the floor. That doesn't prove anything, she said weakly. I tapped the screen to play the audio. It had been difficult to get. I had to pay a forensic audio expert to clean up the sound and isolate the conversation, but the result was crystal clear. Lucia's voice came out of the speakers. I know, love, I know. Just a few more hours, and we'll be done with the ceremony. Yes, I'm going on the honeymoon. But you'll be there too. I've already booked your room. 2 weeks together, Sebastian. We just have to hold on a little longer. Lucia collapsed onto the sofa, her face completely white. I have 16 more videos like this. I continued in a neutral voice. Recordings of phone calls, text messages, emails, everything documenting your relationship with Sebastian during our engagement and after our wedding. All with verifiable dates and times. What? What are you going to do with that? She whispered. I smiled. And this time it wasn't a kind smile at all. That, dear Lucia, depends entirely on you. Lucia looked at me with growing horror as I calmly put my phone back in my pocket. Blackmail, she finally managed to articulate. You're going to blackmail me with those videos. Blackmail is such an ugly word. I replied, pouring more coffee as if we were having a casual conversation about the weather. I prefer to think of this as insurance, a guarantee that certain truths will remain private as long as certain conditions are met. What conditions? She asked, her voice trembling between fear and rage. I sat down again, taking my time to answer. I wanted her to feel every second of uncertainty, every moment of vulnerability. It's simple, I said finally. You continue to be my wife, not just on paper, but publicly. We attend family events together. We maintain appearances on social media. We act like the happy couple everyone thinks we are. That's what I've been doing, Lucia protested. No, I corrected firmly. You've been making the minimum effort, forced smiles, physical presence without emotional connection. That's going to change. From now on, you'll be the perfect wife, attentive, loving, dedicated. I can't pretend to love you, she said in a broken voice. Of course you can, I replied. You already did it for 6 months while planning our wedding. What's one more year? A year, she repeated. You said you only needed a year for the loan, but that loan has no penalties. Why would I stay with you now? Because, I said slowly, making sure every word landed with weight. If you don't, I'll send these videos to your father, your mother, all our wedding guests, every one of your colleagues at the advertising agency, and of course, to Sebastian's boss. Lucia let out a sob. You'd ruin my life out of spite. No, I corrected her. I'd ruin your life as a consequence of your actions. You created this situation. You chose to marry me knowing you loved another man. You decided to bring your lover on our honeymoon. Now you live with the real consequences of those decisions. Sebastian would lose his job, she whispered. His company has strict policies about relationships with married colleagues. I know, I confirmed. I researched your agency's human resources policies 3 months ago. Extramarital affairs with colleagues are explicitly forbidden, especially when both parties work in the same department. Sebastian would be fired immediately, and with a mark like that on his record, it would be very difficult for him to find another job in the industry. You're a monster, Lucia accused, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm the man you decided to marry, I replied. And now you're finding out that maybe you didn't know me as well as you thought. Lucia was silent for a long moment, processing the trap that had fallen on her. I could see her mind working, looking for some way out, some escape. She wouldn't find any. I had spent months making sure of that. What else? She finally asked in a defeated voice. Besides keeping up public appearances, what else do you want from me? You end your relationship with Sebastian, I declared, completely. No contact outside of absolutely necessary work, no private messages, no personal calls, no secret meetings. That's impossible, she protested. We work together, we have shared projects. Then I suggest you request a transfer to another department, I replied. Or better yet, look for a job at another agency. There are plenty of options in the city. I'm not leaving my job for you, she yelled, some of her rebellious spirit returning. You're not leaving it for me, I explained patiently. You're leaving it because it's the only way to protect Sebastian, because as long as you work together, the temptation to continue your relationship will be too strong. And if I catch you together again, even just once, those videos go public immediately. Lucia buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. For a moment, I almost felt compassion for her. Almost. But then I remembered her confession on our honeymoon. The casual way she had destroyed everything I believed about our future together, and the compassion evaporated. There's a third condition, I added after letting her cry for a moment. She looked up, her eyes red and swollen. What more could you possibly want? Marriage counseling, I announced. We start next week. 2 sessions a week with a therapist of my choice. Marriage counseling, she repeated incredulously. What for? This marriage is dead. Publicly it's not, I replied. And a newlywed couple seeking professional help to strengthen their relationship seems very committed and mature. Besides, we need a credible narrative to explain any tension others might notice between us. You're crazy, Lucia said, shaking her head. Completely crazy. Maybe, I nodded, but I'm the crazy one with compromising videos of you and your lover. So I suggest you cooperate. Lucia stood up abruptly. I need to think. I need to get out of here. Of course, I said kindly. Take the day. But remember, every hour you spend with Sebastian today will be documented. I have someone watching you both right now. It was another lie. I didn't have anyone following her, but she didn't know that, and paranoia would do my work for me. Lucia grabbed her bag and left the apartment without another word, slamming the door so hard it made the pictures on the wall tremble. I leaned back in my chair, feeling strangely empty. This victory tasted like nothing. There was no satisfaction in seeing Lucia fall apart, just a gray, heavy feeling settling in my chest. But I had come too far to stop now. My phone rang. It was a message from my mother. Family lunch on Sunday. We want to hear more about the honeymoon, and your father wants to talk to you about something important. I replied, we'll be there. Can I bring anything? Just your beautiful wife, my mother replied with a heart emoji. Beautiful wife, if only she knew. Sunday came faster than expected. Lucia had spent the last few days in hostile silence, communicating with me only when absolutely necessary. She hadn't mentioned Sebastian again, hadn't tried to negotiate the terms of our agreement. When it was time to get ready for the family lunch, Lucia came out of her room impeccably dressed. She was wearing a light blue dress my mother had given her for her birthday, with her hair perfectly styled and makeup that hid the dark circles from sleepless nights. You're beautiful, I said honestly. Don't talk to me unless there's an audience, she replied coldly, walking toward the door. Lunch at my parents' house started normally. My mother had prepared pozole, my favorite food, and the table was filled with side dishes. My father was in a good mood, joking about his college days. My younger sister, Sophia, had come with her boyfriend of 2 years, Marco. So, my mother said as she served the pozole, tell us all about Cancun. The pictures you posted looked amazing. Lucia smiled brightly, instantly transforming into the happy wife. It was a dream come true, Mrs. Elena. The resort was beautiful, the beach perfect, and Rodrigo, she turned to me, her eyes shining with what anyone would think was genuine love. Rodrigo was the most attentive husband any woman could wish for. He woke me up every morning with fresh coffee. He had organized surprise excursions. He even learned to dance salsa, just to impress me at the hotel's Caribbean party night. It was all a lie. I hadn't done any of those things, but the story sounded good and my family happily absorbed it. I always knew Rodrigo would be a good husband, my father said proudly. I raised him to treat his wife like a queen. And he does, Lucia assured, taking my hand on the table. Her fingers were cold, stiff, but her smile remained warm. I'm the luckiest woman in the world. The performance was perfect, too perfect. Even my sister, who was usually skeptical of everything, seemed convinced. In fact, my father continued, that brings me to what I wanted to talk to you about, son. Everyone at the table fell silent, waiting. Your uncle Arturo is expanding his import-export business, my father explained. He needs a trustworthy accountant to handle the financial operations. The position comes with a 40% salary increase over what you make now, plus quarterly bonuses. 40%. That was significant. But there's a catch. My father continued. The position requires moving to Monterrey for at least 2 years. After that, you could come back as a regional manager if you want, but the first 2 years must be there, establishing operations. I felt Lucia tense up next to me. Monterrey was a 9-hour drive from here. 9 hours away from Sebastian. It's an incredible opportunity, my father added. But I understand you're newlyweds. I don't want to pressure you if you and Lucia prefer to stay here. All eyes turned to us. My mother looked hopeful, Sophia curious, Marco indifferent, Lucia terrified. What do you think, love? I asked Lucia sweetly. Would you be willing to move to Monterrey with me? It would be a great adventure for us as a couple. I saw the panic in her eyes. If she said no, she would raise suspicion. What newlywed wife wouldn't support her husband's career? But if she said yes, it meant leaving Sebastian behind, possibly losing any chance of being with him. Her voice began to tremble slightly. I understand if you need to think about it. My mother interrupted quickly. It's a big decision. Take your time. But I wasn't going to let Lucia have time. This was too perfect an opportunity. Actually, I said, squeezing Lucia's hand firmly. Lucia and I had already talked about the possibility of making a change, right, love? Lucia swallowed. I could see her mind working frantically, looking for some way out. Yes, she finally forced out. Yes, we talked about new opportunities. So do you accept? My father asked excitedly. I looked Lucia straight in the eyes. In them, I saw pleading, desperation, pure hatred, but I also saw resignation. She knew she had no choice. We'll need a few days to get our things in order, I said softly. But yes, Dad, I accept the offer. My father stood up and hugged me tightly. Excellent. I'll tell Arturo this afternoon. You could start in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. 21 days before I would permanently take Lucia away from Sebastian. The rest of the lunch passed in a blur of congratulations and plans. My mother was already talking about helping us find an apartment in Monterey. Sophia was asking if she could visit us. Marco offered contacts in the city who could help with the move. Lucia kept her smile on the whole time, nodding at the appropriate moments, laughing when expected. But I could feel the tension radiating from her body. I could see the way her knuckles turned white every time she squeezed her napkin. When we finally said our goodbyes and got into the car to go home, Lucia maintained her composure until we were out of my parents' sight. Then she fell apart. Monterey, she yelled. You're going to take me to Monterey. We're going to move to Monterey. I corrected, starting the engine. As the married couple we are, I can't leave the city. My job is here. My family is here. Sebastian is here. Exactly, I said calmly. And that's why we're going. You need distance from Sebastian. Distance that will help you fulfill your part of the deal. This wasn't part of the original deal, she accused. You said a year of keeping up appearances. You said nothing about moving to another city. Keeping up appearances includes supporting my career, I replied. And honestly, Lucia, you should be grateful. A 40% salary increase means I'll be able to pay off that wedding loan much faster. Your father will be happy. Do you hate me? She said in a broken voice. You really hate me. I drove in silence for a moment, considering her statement. I don't hate you, I said finally. That would require me to still feel something for you. What I feel now is indifference. You're a problem I need to manage, a situation that needs to be resolved, nothing more. Lucia sobbed, covering her face with her hands. What happened to the man I fell in love with? The sweet, kind Rodrigo I met 2 years ago, he died. I replied without emotion. The night his wife confessed to him that she loved another man on their honeymoon. The rest of the trip was silent. When we arrived at the apartment, Lucia went straight to her room and closed the door. I heard her crying for hours. I sat in the living room looking out the window at the city lights somewhere out there. Sebastian was probably oblivious to what had just happened, oblivious to the fact that the woman he loved was about to be torn from his life. My phone vibrated with a message from my father. I'm very proud of you, son. You and Lucia are going to do great things in Monterey. I replied with a simple thanks, Dad. But as I sent the message, a small voice in the back of my mind asked if I had gone too far. If this revenge, this elaborate construction of control and manipulation would really bring me the peace I was looking for. I ignored the voice. It was too late for doubts now. The plan was in motion. The pieces were falling into place. And in 3 weeks, Lucia would be 900 kilometers away from Sebastian, trapped in a new city, in a life that I would completely control. Revenge, I discovered, tasted bitter, but I served it anyway. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Lucia had to inform her boss at the advertising agency that she was resigning due to her husband's move to Monterey. The news hit the office like a bomb, especially Sebastian. I know because Lucia made the mistake of leaving her phone unlocked one night while she was showering. Sebastian's messages were desperate. Monterey, why didn't you tell me anything? You can't leave. We'll find a way to be together. You quit too. We can start over in another city together. Lucia, please answer me. I love you. I deleted all the unread messages from my own phone and left hers exactly as I had found it. I wanted her to know that I could read her conversations at any time, but I chose not to confront her. The implicit message was clear. She was being constantly watched. Lucia's parents' reaction was different from what I expected. Her mother cried with joy over the wonderful opportunity we were given. Her father, Don Fernando, hugged me with genuine pride. You'll take good care of my princess, right, Rodrigo? He asked me with moist eyes during the farewell dinner they organized. With my life, Don Fernando. I lied smoothly. Lucia watched these exchanges with an expression of total misery. Every hug from her parents, every congratulation from friends, every comment about what a perfect couple we were, was another nail in the coffin. A week before the move, we had our first marriage counseling session. I had carefully chosen the therapist, Dr. Hector Ramirez, a renowned psychologist who had written several books on marriage and commitment. What Lucia didn't know was that Dr. Ramirez had been my personal therapist for the past 6 months. "Welcome," Dr. Ramirez greeted as we entered his spacious office. "Please, have a seat." We sat on the leather sofa, keeping a careful distance between us. Dr. Ramirez observed us with professional interest. "So, Rodrigo mentioned to me that you're newlyweds, but you're experiencing some adjustments." He began. "Can you tell me a little about your relationship?" Lucia glanced at me, clearly wondering how much I had shared with the therapist. "We've been together for 2 years," she began in a tense voice. "We got married a month ago, and now we're moving to Monterrey for Rodrigo's job. How do you feel about the move?" Dr. Ramirez asked directly. Lucia hesitated. I could see the conflict in her eyes. She wanted to scream the truth, expose the whole situation, but she knew that doing so would mean Sebastian's destruction. "It's a difficult transition," she finally admitted, "leaving my job, my friends, my family." "That's completely understandable," Dr. Ramirez validated. "And you, Rodrigo, how do you feel about asking Lucia to make this sacrifice?" "Guilty," I said honestly. "I know it's a lot to ask of her, but I also believe this opportunity can strengthen our marriage. We'll be alone, without the distractions of our previous life, able to focus completely on each other." The words sounded nice. Dr. Ramirez nodded approvingly. Lucia clenched her teeth. "Lucia, do you feel supported by Rodrigo in this decision?" the therapist asked. "Rodrigo always supports me," she replied mechanically. "He's a wonderful husband." "I noticed some tension in your voice," Dr. Ramirez observed. "Is there anything else you'd like to share?" Lucia looked at me again. I saw the calculation in her eyes. "The risk assessment. I'm just worried about leaving my career behind," she said carefully. "I worked very hard to get where I am at the agency." "A valid concern," Dr. Ramirez affirmed. "Rodrigo, have you discussed how Lucia can continue to develop professionally in Monterrey?" "Of course," I replied softly. "I've already researched several advertising agencies there. Some are actively looking for creatives with her experience. I even scheduled some interviews for our second week in the city." This was true. I had done all that research, but what I didn't mention was that I had personally contacted each of those agencies, introducing myself as the concerned husband, explaining that my wife had just gotten married and needed a stable, drama-free work environment. In other words, I made sure that any agency that hired her knew to keep her away from any situation that could compromise her marriage. The session continued for another hour with Dr. Ramirez guiding us through communication and goal-setting exercises. Lucia participated mechanically, saying the right things at the right times, but her heart clearly wasn't in it. When we left the office, Lucia waited until we were in the car before speaking. "How much did you pay him?" she asked bitterly. "Excuse me, the therapist, how much did you pay him to be on your side?" "I didn't pay him anything," I replied honestly. "Dr. Ramirez is a respected professional. He's just doing his job." "You didn't tell him the truth?" she accused. "You didn't tell him about Sebastian, about your blackmail, about anything real." "I told him we're facing adjustment challenges as a newlywed couple," I said. "Which is true. I just omitted some specific details." "Specific details like you have me prisoner," she muttered resentfully. "You're free to tell him the whole truth in our next session," I offered. "Explain about your affair with Sebastian. Show him the messages. Confess everything." Dr. Ramirez is bound by professional confidentiality not to share anything we say. Lucia fell silent because we both knew the truth. Even if the therapist couldn't legally share what she said, the mere admission of her infidelity in a professional setting would make it real in a different way. She would no longer be able to maintain the fiction that she was the victim in this situation. The day of the move arrived with a persistent rain. The movers packed our belongings with professional efficiency while Lucia's family gathered to say goodbye. Her mother cried openly. "My baby is going so far," she sobbed as she hugged Lucia. "It's only a 9-hour drive, Mom." Lucia tried to comfort her, though her own voice trembled. "We can visit each other every month." Don Fernando took me aside while the women were saying their goodbyes. "Rodrigo," he began seriously, "I know this might seem old-fashioned, but I need to say something as a father. Of course, Don Fernando. Lucia is my only daughter, the light of my life. When we gave you our blessing to marry her, we trusted that you would treat her like the treasure she is. I felt a pang of genuine guilt. Don Fernando was a good man. He didn't deserve a son-in-law like me. I see you're facing some adjustments, he continued. I've noticed tension between you these last few weeks. It's normal in the first months of marriage, but I want you to know something. He looked me straight in the eye. If ever Lucia is not happy, if I ever feel that she's not being treated with the respect and love she deserves, I will personally come to Monterey and bring her back. I don't care how good your uncle's job is. My daughter is more important than any professional opportunity. The words hit me harder than I expected. Here was a father who truly loved his daughter, who would put her above all else. So different from how Lucia had treated me. I understand, Don Fernando, I replied in a hoarse voice. And you have my word that I will take care of her. Lies, all lies. But I said them with enough sincerity that he seemed satisfied. The hardest goodbye, however, was when Sebastian showed up unexpectedly. He arrived just as we were closing the moving truck, parking abruptly in the middle of the street. He got out of the car looking desperate, his hair disheveled, his clothes wrinkled as if he had slept in them. Lucia, he called, completely ignoring everyone else. I need to talk to you, please. Lucia paled. Her mother frowned. Her father tensed up. Sebastian, I said kindly, approaching him with a fake smile. What a surprise to see you here. Rodrigo, he replied, not really looking at me. His eyes were fixed on Lucia. I just need a minute with Lucia. It's about a work project she left unfinished. I'm afraid Lucia is a bit busy right now, I said in a firm voice. As you can see, we're moving. A minute, Sebastian insisted, his voice taking on a desperate tone. Just 1 minute, Lucia. Lucia's mother intervened suspiciously. Who is this man? He was my co-worker at the agency, Lucia explained quickly, her face red with embarrassment and panic. And he comes all the way here on the day of your move for a project? Don Fernando asked with growing suspicion. The situation was escalating dangerously. I could see Sebastian was about to do something stupid, something that would expose everything. I could see Lucia freezing, unable to handle the situation. I made the decision for everyone. Sebastian, I said in an authoritative voice, walking toward him and deliberately placing myself between him and Lucia. I appreciate your dedication to work, but today is not the time. If there's anything urgent, you can email Lucia. She'll get back to you when we're settled in Monterey. You don't understand. Sebastian practically yelled, trying to look around me at Lucia. Lucia, please. Just listen to me for a moment. You don't have to do this. You don't have to go with him. The silence that followed was absolute. Lucia's parents looked at each other with growing confusion and alarm. Lucia looked like she wanted the earth to swallow her whole. I think you should leave, young man. Don Fernando said in a dangerously calm voice, approaching. Now, Don Fernando, you don't know. Sebastian began. Sebastian, go, Lucia suddenly shouted, her voice breaking. Please, just go. You've already done enough. Sebastian looked at her with total devastation. Lucia, I love you. I can't let you go like this. Well, you'll have to. I replied firmly, putting my hand on Lucia's shoulder in a possessive gesture. Lucia is my wife, and we're moving to Monterey to start our new life together. Whatever you think is between you, it's in your imagination. That's not true, Sebastian protested. Lucia, tell them the truth. All eyes turned to Lucia. I saw the exact moment she made her decision. I saw how her shoulders sank in defeat, how her eyes filled with tears, how all the fight left her. Sebastian, she said in a trembling but clear voice. I don't know what makes you think there's anything between us other than a professional friendship, but you're wrong. I love my husband. I'm going with him because I want to. Please, don't make this any harder than it already is. Every word was a dagger to Sebastian. I saw him crumble, his face going through disbelief, pain, anger, and finally bitter acceptance. I understand, he finally said in a broken voice. I'm sorry, I misunderstood things. I wish you the best. He turned and walked back to his car with mechanical steps. We watched him drive away in silence. What was all that? Lucia's mother asked with concern. Nothing, Mom, Lucia replied, wiping her tears. Just a misunderstanding, Sebastian. I think he had a bit of a crush on me, but I never gave him any reason to think his feelings were reciprocated. Another lie, but this time one that protected both her and me. Don Fernando looked at me with a new assessment, as if seeing me in a different light. Did you know about his feelings? I suspected it, I admitted. But I trust Lucia completely. She would never give me a reason to doubt her. The words were poison disguised as trust, and they worked. You're a good man, Rodrigo, Don Fernando said, patting my back. A lesser man would have made a scene, but you kept your cool and dignity, if only he knew. Finally, after more goodbyes and promises of frequent calls, Lucia and I got into my car. The moving truck had already left for Monterrey. We would follow it, making the 9-hour journey that would mark the beginning of our new life. For the first hour, neither of us spoke. Lucia looked out the window, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. I focused on the road, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. It was Lucia who finally broke the silence. You just destroyed the last thing I had left, she said in a toneless voice. You know that, right, Sebastian? He destroyed himself. I replied, showing up like that, making a scene in front of your parents was reckless and selfish. He was desperate, just like me. Desperation is no excuse for stupidity. Lucia laughed humorlessly. Coming from you, that's ironic. What's that supposed to mean? It means all of this elaborate revenge of yours, is the definition of desperate stupidity. Do you think controlling me, taking me away from Sebastian, dragging me to Monterrey will make you feel better? But it won't. You'll just become as miserable a person as I am. Her words hit me because I knew she was right. This revenge, as satisfying as it seemed in theory, tasted bitter in practice. There was no joy in my victory, only a void that grew with every kilometer that took us further from the city. Maybe, I admitted, but at least we'll be miserable together like a real husband and wife. Lucia closed her eyes and rested her head against the window. I hate that you still use that word, husband and wife, as if it means anything between us. It means everything, I replied. It means you signed a contract, you made promises, and now you have to live with the consequences of breaking those promises before you even started to keep them. And you? She asked in a broken voice. You don't have to live with the consequences of becoming this cruel and manipulative man. The question hung between us as we continued our journey to Monterrey. I had no answer. Or maybe I did, but I didn't want to admit it because the truth was that Lucia was right. This revenge was changing me, turning me into someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of blackmail, manipulation, calculated cruelty, but I had crossed the point of no return. And now we would both live with the consequences. We arrived in Monterrey around 11 at night. The apartment I had rented was in a modern part of the city, a 15-story building with private security and amenities that Lucia barely glanced at when we entered. The movers had left all the boxes stacked in the living room, creating a cardboard labyrinth we would have to navigate for the next few weeks. 2 bedrooms, Lucia observed in a flat voice, looking at the space. At least that 3. Technically, I corrected. There's a study you can use as an office if you get a remote job. Lucia didn't respond. She just walked to the farthest room, closed the door behind her, and didn't come out for the rest of the night. The first 3 months in Monterrey established a pattern that became our new dysfunctional normal. I would wake up early to go to my Uncle Arturo's office. The work was demanding but satisfying. Exactly the kind of challenge I needed to keep my mind busy. Lucia, after 2 weeks of searching, got a position at a boutique advertising agency that specialized in digital marketing for small businesses. At night, we shared the same space, but lived completely separate lives. We had dinner in silence when we coincided, although she usually ate in her room. On weekends, I explored the city while Lucia locked herself in with her laptop, making video calls with her family and friends from our old city. She never mentioned Sebastian, at least not in front of me. But sometimes, when I passed by her room, I would hear her crying silently. The marriage counseling continued via video conference with Dr. Ramirez. Each session was the same carefully orchestrated farce. Lucia would talk about her difficulty adjusting to the new city. I would express my desire to support her better. Dr. Ramirez would give us communication exercises that we never completed. For months after the move, something changed. I came home one afternoon to find Lucia sitting in the living room, her phone in her hand, tears streaming down her face. But these tears were different. They weren't from frustration or anger. They were from pure devastation. What happened? I asked. Something in her body language set off an alarm in my chest. Lucia looked at me with red, swollen eyes. Sebastian got married. The words hit me with unexpected force. What, he got married? She repeated, her voice breaking. With Carolina, the graphic designer from the agency. They got engaged 2 months ago and got married last weekend. He announced it today on social media. She showed me her phone. There on Instagram was a radiant Sebastian in a stylish suit, kissing a beautiful woman in a white dress. The caption read, "Starting my life with my best friend and now wife. Thanks to everyone for sharing this special day with us." Lucia sobbed. 2 months, Rodrigo. 2 months after I left, he was already engaged to someone else, as if I had never meant anything. For the first time since our honeymoon, I felt something akin to compassion for her, seeing her completely fall apart, facing the reality that the man for whom she had risked everything had forgotten her so quickly. It was strangely painful to witness. "Lucia," I began, not knowing what to say. "Do you know what the worst part is?" She continued, violently wiping her tears. "That this is probably exactly what you wanted. To see me realize that it was all a lie, that Sebastian never really loved me, that I destroyed my marriage with you for nothing." I didn't. I started to protest, but I stopped because she was right. Part of me, the dark, vengeful part, felt satisfied that Sebastian had turned out to be exactly the kind of man I thought he was. An opportunist who quickly moved on to the next conquest when the first one got too complicated. Lucia stood up abruptly. "I'm going out." "Where to?" I asked. "I don't know. To walk? To get a drink? Anywhere but this apartment with you." "Lucia, I don't think it's a good idea for you to. I don't care what you think," she yelled, her pain turning to rage. "I don't care about your rules or your control or any of this. I just need to get out of here before I go completely insane." I watched her grab her bag and leave, slamming the door so hard it made the walls vibrate. I was left alone in the apartment, surrounded by silence and a growing sense that something fundamental had just changed. Lucia returned 4 hours later, slightly drunk, but not completely wasted. She collapsed on the sofa next to me, where I had been sitting in the dark waiting for her. "You didn't follow me," she observed with surprise. "No," I admitted. "I thought you needed real space for the first time." Lucia laughed bitterly. "How considerate of you, my jailer." We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Lucia spoke again. "Do you know what I realized today while walking around the city?" She asked in a quiet voice. "That I hate my life. I hate this apartment. I hate this city. I hate my job. I hate everything about the existence I'm living. But most of all, Rodrigo, I hate myself." "Lucia, don't interrupt me," she said. "Let me finish. I hate myself for being so selfish, so blind, so stupid. I hate myself for doing this to you, for hurting my parents, for believing in a man who clearly was never worth it. And most of all, I hate myself for not having the courage to just leave you, to face the consequences of those videos, to accept the public humiliation and move on." "Then do it," I said softly. Lucia looked at me in confusion. "What?" "Go," I repeated. "Take your things. Go back to the city. Look for Sebastian if you want, even though he's married now. Do whatever you need to do. I won't stop you." "Is this another trick?" she asked suspiciously. I shook my head. "It's not a trick, it's exhaustion. I'm tired of this war, Lucia. I'm tired of being the villain in your story, and honestly, I'm tired of punishing myself by keeping you here." "And the videos?" she asked in a trembling voice. I took out my phone, found the folder where I kept all the compromising recordings, and in front of her eyes, I deleted them all one by one until the folder was empty. "There are no more videos," I said. "There's no more blackmail. You're free to go if you want." Lucia looked at me with fresh tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why? Why now?" "Because," I answered honestly, "this revenge turned me into someone I don't want to be. I became cruel, manipulative, controlling, everything I hated in the people who hurt me, and I realized that by trapping you, I also trapped myself." Lucia, covering her face with her hands. "I don't know what to do, Rodrigo. I don't even know who I am anymore." Then I suggested, "Not as my prisoner, but as my roommate, I guess. Live your life, find out who you really are. I'll do the same, and when the year is over, if you still want a divorce, I'll sign it without a fight." "Why would you do that?" she asked with genuine confusion. "Because," I admitted, feeling the weight of months of anger and resentment finally starting to loosen. "I'm as lost as you are. And maybe, just maybe, we can help each other find our way back to being decent people, together, but separate." Lucia was silent for a long moment, processing this unexpected offer. Finally, she nodded slowly. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay, but with real conditions this time. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more games. Agreed, I accepted. I extended my hand. Lucia looked at it for a moment before shaking it. It wasn't a romantic gesture. It was an agreement between two broken people trying to find some way to coexist. The following months brought gradual but significant changes. Lucia started individual therapy, processing years of selfish decisions and their consequences. I did the same, working with a new therapist on my need for control and my inability to process pain without turning it into anger. We started having real conversations, not frequent, but honest. Lucia admitted that she had fallen in love with the idea of Sebastian more than the real man, that she had been looking for something to make her feel alive because she had lost her own identity in the process of pleasing everyone. I admitted that my elaborate revenge had been more about my own pain and feeling of inadequacy than about real justice. We didn't become friends, we didn't fall in love again, but we developed something akin to mutual respect, the respect of two people who had hurt each other deeply but were trying to learn from it instead of perpetuating the cycle. 8 months after our move to Monterey, Lucia got a significant promotion at her agency. We celebrated with a civilized dinner at an Italian restaurant near our apartment. I've been thinking, she said as we shared a bottle of wine, about the divorce. My heart tightened slightly, though I wasn't sure if it was from relief or something more complicated. Yes, I think we should wait, she continued. Not for the wrong reasons this time. Not for blackmail or fear or revenge, but because honestly, I'm not ready to make important decisions about my future yet. I'm just starting to figure out who I am outside of being someone's daughter or someone's girlfriend or someone's wife. I understand, I said softly. But when I'm ready, she added, looking directly at me. When I really know what I want from life, I hope we can end this like adults. Without cruelty, without revenge, just honesty. We will, I promised. And this time the promise was real. A full year after our wedding, we sat together in our Monterey apartment, reviewing the divorce papers my lawyer had prepared. Lucia read them carefully, unhurriedly. You're not asking for anything, she observed. No alimony, no division of assets, nothing. I don't want anything except to move on, I replied. And I hope you can do the same. Lucia signed the papers with a steady hand. I did the same. And so, with 2 simple signatures, we ended what we had started with such innocent hope a year ago. What will you do now? I asked as I put the documents away. I'm staying in Monterey, she replied with confidence. I like my job here. I like the person I'm becoming away from all the expectations of my old life. And you, the same, I admitted, my uncle's job has become more than just an opportunity. It's a place where I can build something real. We looked at each other for a long moment, 2 strangers who had shared the most difficult year of their lives. I don't wish you ill, Rodrigo, Lucia said finally. Despite everything, I hope you find real happiness someday. I hope that for you too, I replied honestly. Lucia moved into her own apartment 2 weeks later. We kept minimal contact, only what was necessary to finalize the legal procedures. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was thriving, that she had been promoted again at her agency, that she was dating casually, but with no serious commitments. I did the same. I met a woman named Andrea at an accounting conference. She was direct, honest, with no games or lies. Our relationship developed slowly, built on real communication rather than blind passion. 2 years after the divorce, I received a message from Lucia. It was a photo from an art gallery where her advertising campaign designs were being exhibited. She looked genuinely happy, radiant in a way I had never seen during our marriage. I thought you'd like to know that I finally found my place, the message said. Thank you for letting me go when I needed it most. I replied, I'm glad you found your way. Take care, Lucia. And with that simple exchange, I finally closed that chapter of my life. Was the revenge worth it? No, I had become someone I hated. I had hurt a person who was already suffering, and I had lost months of my life to anger and bitterness. Did I learn anything? Yes, I learned that pain isn't healed with more pain, that revenge only perpetuates the cycle of suffering, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go of the anger and choose to move on. Lucia and I had hurt each other deeply, but eventually, we both found the strength to heal, to grow, to become better versions of ourselves. It wasn't the fairy tale ending I had imagined when I proposed to her, but it was an honest ending, and sometimes that's enough. This story has come to its conclusion. Have you ever had to choose between revenge and forgiveness? Have you learned difficult lessons about letting go of anger? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. If this story made you reflect on relationships, betrayal, and the path to healing, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows us to continue sharing these stories that connect us in our shared humanity. Thank you for joining me until the end of this tale. See you in the next story.